I received a call from my husband, Lucas, in the middle of the night, while I was on a business trip abroad. His words hit me like a truck. "Hey. I want a divorce." I froze, barely managing to say anything. Deep down, I had always feared this day would come. But I never thought he would bring it up while I was so far away. "What do you mean? Can you explain it properly?" I asked, my voice trembling. Lucas let out a bitter laugh. "You probably didn't realize. But I have a daughter. She's younger and prettier than you. We even have a son together. So, I want you to divorce me so I can be with them." I fell silent. And he continued as if he wanted to make everything clear. "I've already sold the house and the car." He paused, clearly waiting for my reaction. I took a deep breath and answered calmly and briefly. "Okay." On the other side of the line, there was a stunned silence. "Huh?" Lucas murmured, confused. He probably thought I would start crying or begging him not to leave. But I didn't. I had prepared myself for this possibility for a long time. His words didn't make me tremble, as he surely expected. A few days later, when I returned home, things were already different. Lucas was at the airport waiting for me, and he seemed very nervous. But let me tell you a bit about myself before we get to that. My name is Jean. I'm 35 years old. And I'm a homemaker. I grew up in a normal, middle-class family. From a young age, I loved learning Italian. So I started taking classes in elementary school. In high school, I also discovered I had a talent for English. During high school, I had the opportunity to stay with a host family in Italy. It was at that time that I started dreaming about working for an international company. To make that dream a reality, I enrolled in the business program at one of the best universities. While I was studying, I spent time abroad in Italy and worked very hard to achieve my goals. Finding a job after graduating wasn't easy at all. But I was very excited when I got a position at my second choice. My family was very proud of me. And my sister even told me, "Jean, you're amazing. We're so proud of you. Take care of yourself and do your best." That support meant everything to me. However, starting my new job was complicated. It was much more demanding than I expected. Although the company treated its employees well, the standards were incredibly high. I was barely 20 years old and had little experience. So I often had to work long hours. My co-workers and supervisors always supported me. And most importantly, I found joy in doing the work I had always dreamed of. After working hard for several years, my efforts were finally recognized. I started receiving more important tasks. And my friends used to say things like, "You're on your way to becoming a successful businesswoman, and you're such a cool and strong woman." But despite how people saw me, I had a weakness for cute things. I loved collecting items from my favorite characters, and even slept with plushes. I always wanted to have a pet. But my busy job made it impossible. Which is why on my days off, I liked going to cat cafes to relax. At work, I maintained a professional and serious image, never showing my softer side. Perhaps because I was so busy, I craved comfort in those little things. As I got older, many of my friends started getting married and having children. At weddings, people often told me that I should get married soon too. I would laugh and say, "I'm too busy with work." The truth is, I wasn't. I didn't feel any romantic interest in anyone at work or among my business contacts. And I didn't have time to meet anyone new either. I wondered if I was destined to stay single forever. At that time, I thought it was okay. I liked focusing on my career. And it didn't seem like a bad way to live. One day, I went to another friend's wedding. As always, I applauded the couple. But this time, I felt a little uneasy. I was already over 30. And if I wanted to get married, I knew I needed to start looking for someone soon. Later, the reception moved to a bar. I found myself sitting alone at the bar with a drink in my hand, watching the other guests laugh and the bride and groom smile shyly. Suddenly, a voice interrupted my thoughts. "Are you alone? Can I sit here?" The voice was soft and pleasant, and it caught me by surprise. "Oh? Sure," I replied as I turned to look at the man. He was about my height, which is somewhat tall for a woman. He looked younger than me. His face was ordinary, but in a pleasant way. Although he wasn't exactly what I expected from someone with such a nice voice. "Are you here for the wedding?" he asked. "Yes. I'm a friend of the bride," I replied. "I'm also a high school friend of the bride. The groom invited me to have a drink together." I nodded. And we started chatting while we drank. "Wow. You work at that international company," he commented. Surprised. "I've heard about that company. It's amazing. For someone like me, who's just an employee at a small company. It seems like you come from another world," the man said. He introduced himself as Lucas. And I found it very easy to talk to him. Before saying goodbye, we exchanged contacts. And we started seeing each other after that. Lucas was 3 years younger than me and worked in sales at a small company. He had a kind personality, was a great listener, and knew how to give sincere compliments. I really enjoyed spending time with him. After a few dates, Lucas confessed that he had feelings for me. And I happily accepted to date him. Although his annual income was less than a third of mine. That didn't matter to me at all at that point. The more time we spent together, the more adorable Lucas seemed to me. I didn't see him as someone super impressive or completely reliable. And maybe that's why I was never disappointed in him. On the contrary, I loved his tender and sincere nature. He would say things like, "I'd love to try your cooking." I couldn't resist and happily cooked for him. After dating for about a year and a half, Lucas surprised me with a ring. "I love how you're always so amazing. But you also have this tender side. If you agree, will you marry me?" he asked. It took me by surprise. But I was excited. I accepted the ring with a smile. "Thank you, Lucas. Let's take care of each other as husband and wife," I said. Lucas was over the moon, practically jumping for joy. And his happiness made me laugh. Afterward, we met our families to share the news. Lucas's parents were kind and simple people. And they blessed our marriage with great pleasure. My family also supported me. And my parents told Lucas to take good care of me. My sister, who was already married, teased me quietly. "He seems just the type of person you'd choose. Knowing your weakness for cute things. But don't spoil him too much." "Okay." I laughed and replied. I know. Thus began my life with Lucas. Since we were starting from scratch. I decided to buy an apartment. It was a big decision, but I thought it would be a good investment for the future. I chose a slightly larger place, thinking about the possibility of having children someday. I thought our happy married life was about to begin. But reality hit me hard. Lucas didn't know how to do any housework. Lucas had depended on his parents, especially his mom, for everything up until the day of our marriage. I tried to be patient and told him, "Lucas, now that we're married, we need to share household chores. If you don't know how to do something, I can teach you." But Lucas frowned and replied, "Now that we're married, isn't it your job to take care of the housework?" I looked at him seriously and replied firmly, "No, Lucas. Household chores are the responsibility of both of us. I also have a very busy job. It will be a problem if you can't even take care of basic things." With determination, I said, "Come on. Get up. I'll teach you how to use the washing machine." I took the time to teach Lucas the basics of household chores. At first, he didn't seem very interested. But little by little, he started doing some cleaning and laundry. However, his efforts were always half-hearted, and many times I had to redo most of what he did. In the kitchen, he was a total disaster. So I decided to take charge of preparing meals in advance. I didn't want to discourage him, so I made an effort to praise him even for the small things he did. I thought that encouraging him would help. But instead of improving, Lucas started doing less and less. He knew that I would always end up doing it, so he began to take advantage of my patience. Finally, I couldn't hold back anymore. "Lucas, you need to stop depending on me so much. Learn to do household chores properly. I'm also busy with work, and I have business trips. You need to take care of things too," I said. Lucas frowned and replied, "What's wrong with you? You've changed since we got married. You're always nagging. You earn good money. So if you're going to complain so much, why not hire someone to do the housework?" I was stunned. Yes, I earned a decent income, but spending money without thinking could quickly deplete our savings. Despite having talked to him about this several times, Lucas refused to change. Then, about a year after we got married, I came home and found Lucas sitting pale in the living room. "Lucas, what's wrong? You don't look well," I asked. He sighed and admitted, "My company is filing for bankruptcy because of the recession. I'll be out of a job next month." What surprised me was that although Lucas had been working overtime more often lately, I had no idea that his company was in such bad shape. "And what are you going to do? Have you started looking for a new job?" I asked. "I'll think about it later," he replied. "I'm tired and stressed. I just need some time." I decided to give him space, thinking he needed time to process everything. But after his company closed and he lost his job, Lucas spent all day playing video games. He didn't do any housework. And when I came home late, I would find him sitting in front of the television, completely absorbed in his games. This went on for months, and my patience reached its limit. One day, I finally told him, "Lucas, you've rested enough. Don't you think it's time to start looking for a job?" He barely looked up. "I want to think carefully about my next job," he replied. "You know, at my old job, they just used me. Next time. I want a job where I can achieve something meaningful. Like self-fulfillment, or whatever. Although I wanted to tell him that he was talking nonsense, I knew that I couldn't force him to work. So even after his unemployment benefits ran out, I continued to support him. One day, while he was glued to his video games, I said sarcastically, "If you like games so much, why don't you try streaming them? You could earn some extra money." To my surprise, Lucas's eyes lit up. "That's a great idea. You're so smart, Gene. I appreciate it. It's an opportunity. I have a good feeling about this," he said, full of enthusiasm. For someone who hadn't done anything for months, it was a sudden change, and I wasn't sure if it was a good or bad thing. "Then, you'll need a PC and streaming equipment," he casually added, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. I blinked, surprised. "I don't have any savings," I replied. But he insisted. "Please, would you buy it for me?" Reluctantly, I bought everything he needed. Deep down, I thought this would fail, and that he would finally realize that he needed to get a proper job. But a few months later, things took a surprising turn. Lucas became popular as a game streamer under the name Ha. To my surprise, he even started ranking on the lists. Online fans left positive comments, saying things like his voice was very pleasant and that he was funny. Despite how bad he was at games, he managed to attract both men and women and even partially showed his face on camera, which attracted attention. Of course, he never mentioned that he was married. "See, I told you I could succeed when I tried. The world finally recognizes my talent," Lucas declared, full of himself. Despite his success, he didn't show a shred of gratitude for all the support I had given him or for buying the equipment that started it all. Still, I approached him calmly. "Lucas, I'm glad you're doing well. But don't you think you should contribute some of your earnings to our household expenses? It's been a while since your unemployment benefits ended, and I've been covering." Lucas looked at me as if I had said something absurd. "Why should I? You earn enough to handle the living expenses. Let's keep our finances separate." I was stunned. True to his words, Lucas kept all his streaming income for himself. By this point, the kind and considerate man I had dated was long gone. He had become completely selfish and dependent on me. At that time, I bought a luxury car. The car I had always dreamed of having. I only drove it on weekends, but I cherished it like a treasure. One day, Lucas casually told me, "Hey, let me drive your car." I raised an eyebrow and replied, "You work from home. You don't need a car to stream. Why would you want to drive it?" He insisted. "We're married, so it's okay. Come on. Let me drive it." I finally gave in and handed over the keys. Although after that, it didn't feel right. Lucas started going out whenever he wanted during the weekdays while I was at work. His popularity as a streamer continued to grow, and he gained a large number of followers. He also started living a flashy lifestyle, dressing in expensive designer clothes. I felt sad seeing how much he had changed. But since we were still married, I continued our life together, hoping that things might improve. When we entered our 5th year of marriage, my career was thriving. I was given more responsibilities at work and often had to travel abroad for business trips. Sometimes I was away for a few days. Other times for up to 4 weeks. Every time I came home, the house was a complete mess. Like a garbage dump. Lucas spent all his time locked in his room, streaming. He still depended on me for everything and never helped around the house. We barely talked anymore. And I found myself wondering why I was still married to him. It was then that I started collecting evidence for a divorce and making plans. One day, I told Lucas that I was going abroad again the next day for a 3-week business trip. "Take care," he said. Not even looking up from his phone. I went on my trip and immersed myself in my work. On the 11th night of my trip, I received a call from Lucas. "Hello. Lucas. Do you know what time it is here? It's midnight." Then he dropped the bombshell. "Hey. Jean. I want a divorce." I froze. What I managed to say was, "I had suspected this might happen someday. But I never thought you would bring it up while I was on the other side of the world." "What do you mean? Can you explain it properly?" I asked, trying to remain calm. Lucas chuckled. "You probably haven't noticed. But I have a mistress. She's younger and prettier than you. We even have a child together." I didn't say anything. So he continued. "I want you to divorce me so I can live with my mistress and our child." "Oh? And I've already sold the house and the car." He sounded so confident. As if he expected me to break down. But I didn't. I simply said, "Okay." What Lucas stammered was that he must have thought I would cry or beg him to stay. He had no idea that I had been mentally preparing for this moment for a long time. "You want a divorce? Okay," I said calmly. "There's a complete divorce paper in the living room drawer. You can sign it and submit it yourself." Lucas was surprised. "You had the divorce papers ready? Well, thanks for making it easy. Goodbye. Then. Enjoy being the woman your husband left behind," he then laughed. But I replied, Sure. Well, I'm going back to sleep. Goodbye." Lucas hung up. And I immediately blocked his number. I called my sister and asked her for a favor. Then, I went to bed and slept peacefully until the morning. I focused on my work and kept myself busy until my trip was over. Finally, it was time to go home. The business class seat provided by my company was so comfortable that I fell asleep during the flight. When I woke up, I stretched and thought that it had been a good nap with no jet lag for me this time. I was ready to return to normal life. After landing, I picked up my luggage and headed towards the airport lobby. As I reached the exit, I suddenly heard someone shout, "Hey, Jean." I turned to see Lucas running toward me, looking panicked. "Oh? Why are you here?" I asked, surprised. I don't recall asking for a ride. Lucas didn't answer directly. Instead, he started ranting. His words came out in a torrent. "What have you done? The car. The house, it's all your fault." I took a step back, startled by his strange behavior. "I don't understand. What are you talking about?" I said calmly. "Can I leave now? I'm tired." I yawned, crossing my arms, waiting for him to explain. "First, I filed for the divorce papers after you told me," he began. "See? You barely pay attention. Are you even listening?" Lucas broke down. When I went home to meet the real estate agent about selling the house, there was a lock on the door. I couldn't get in. Then, when I tried to use the car, there was a security lock on the tires. And I couldn't drive it. I tried calling you. But you didn't answer, you blocked my number. I let out a small sigh. Yes. I blocked your calls. So what about it? Lucas's face turned red with anger. You did it. You put the lock on the house and the security locks on the car tires. How did you do that when you were abroad? I shrugged. I asked my sister to take care of it. His eyes widened in surprise. Your sister? Yes. I said, keeping my tone light. You said you sold the house and the car. I remember. But when my sister checked, both were still there. So, I guess you were just lying. You were probably just getting estimates from agents. Lucas's face turned even redder. And he stammered. Well, yeah. That's true. But I was about to sell them. I couldn't help but sigh as Lucas continued to rant. No. Lucas. You couldn't have sold the house or the car. Even if you had tried. Both are in my name. And all the important documents needed to sell them are at my parents' house. Lucas froze. Completely blank. What? He murmured. Did you really think someone could sell a house or a car by just saying, I'm selling this, without being the legal owner? Obviously. They need proof of ownership and proper documentation. I said, shaking my head. Lucas looked completely dazed. His mouth opened and closed like a fish. You've always left me with all the complicated paperwork during our marriage. So of course you wouldn't know even something so basic. I added. With a hint of distaste. Lucas's face twisted in frustration. If you knew they couldn't be sold, why did you put locks on the house and the car? Because of you. I couldn't get into the house or use the car. It was awful. I sighed again. Why would I let someone who cheated on me, had a mistress, and demanded a divorce, have free access to my house? The same with the car. They are in my name. So let's secure them. I can't believe you're doing all this just because I couldn't sell your stupid property. You're not even that pretty. That's what I hated about you, always acting like you can handle everything yourself. So arrogant for a woman. I remained quiet and replied. Oh? Really? Then why did you marry me in the first place? Lucas scoffed. Obviously. For your money. The fact that you worked at an international company and earned good money. That was the only reason you were worth marrying. His words dripped with malice. But they didn't affect me. I just looked at him. Thinking. Come to think of it, there wasn't much benefit in marrying you either. Lucas's face turned red with anger. Don't act so high and mighty. It's me who's leaving you. My mistress is much better than you, hundreds of times prettier. And she even gave me a son. Doesn't that make you feel inferior? She's a better woman than you think. I couldn't help but smile slightly. Better than me? Huh? I replied. What's so funny? Lucas snapped. Still smiling. I reached into my bag and pulled out a photo. Is this your mistress? I asked, showing him a picture of a young, attractive woman in her early 20s. Lucas's eyes darted nervously as he recognized her. You knew about Miriam, he stammered. I gave a sweet smile. Of course. You're not the only one who wanted a divorce. I've been gathering evidence for a while now. You're so careless. Lucas. You didn't realize that the dashcam also records the interior. I said, watching his face turn pale. But I didn't stop there. Once I saw when you met her in the dashcam footage. It was easy. I hired a private investigator to gather more information. The evidence didn't take long to identify your mistress. Lucas's face froze. And I added. I was a bit surprised to find out that she was already pregnant. Even though he stood there stunned. He finally blurted out. Don't do anything to her. She's been through a lot. After giving birth. She's young. Doesn't have any money. And she didn't even know I was married. I raised an eyebrow. Pretending to be concerned. Wow. You're really defending her. You must love Miriam very much. Of course I do, he said firmly. She's pure sweetness and my soulmate. I'll protect her and our child. No matter what. While Lucas was preening in his own righteousness, I silently pulled out my phone and played a video. It was dashcam footage from my car showing Lucas driving with a very pregnant Miriam sitting in the passenger seat. Thank you for taking me for a drive today, Miriam said in a sweet voice. The food was also delicious. Lucas's face in the video lit up with pride. You're so good at saying thank you. Such a good girl, he said smugly. I want to marry you soon. Miriam pouted and crossed her arms. Really? Then hurry up and divorce that old hag. I want you to be my husband before the baby is born. Okay. Okay. Lucas's voice in the video soothed her. Just wait a little longer. I'll take care of everything. While she's on her business trip abroad. Then we'll be together. You and the baby will live comfortably with the money from selling the house and the car. I paused the video and looked at Lucas. So, Miriam didn't know you were married. Huh. Seems to me like she's quite aware of it. Lucas was pale and sweating. Before he could say anything, I dropped another bombshell. Being pure. Maybe you want to look more closely. What are you trying to say? Lucas yelled. I pulled out a stack of photos and scattered them on the floor. Lucas's face paled with every photo he looked at. What is this? Who are these men? The photos showed Miriam with different men. Holding hands. Entering hotels. And even receiving prenatal checkups with a man who wasn't Lucas. That's really Miriam, I said calmly. She searches popular streamers for relationships. Let me guess. You started as a streamer. And she was just another fan. Lucas froze. Unable to speak. He fell to his knees. Clutching one of the photos of Miriam. His face white with shock. Looking at him with pity. I said in a soft, almost understanding voice. You're really something else. Lucas. You plan to raise a child that might not even be yours. I said flatly. Looking at Lucas. He muttered to himself as if in shock. No. Miriam told me I was the only one. This can't be true. I looked at him without emotion. Can I leave? We're basically strangers at this point. There's nothing left to discuss. Suddenly, Lucas snapped out of his stupor and started yelling. If you hadn't shown me all this, I could have continued to be happy. How cruel can you be? Because of you, I can't trust anything anymore. I couldn't help but sigh. Feeling nothing but annoyance. That's not my problem. Lucas. Do you even hear yourself? Whatever. Do what you want. He scoffed and said. Fine. Even if I divorce you and leave Miriam, I'll still be fine. I have over 3 million followers as a streamer. And I'm earning way more than you now. Too bad for you. You're losing a famous streamer as a husband. At that, I smiled sweetly and said, why don't you check your phone? Lucas froze for a second before grabbing his phone with a petulant look. As he unlocked it, his face turned pale. What is this? He said, seeing over 1.000 notifications. What's happening? He frantically scrolled through his screen, his expression becoming more horrified with each second. He finally looked at me, trembling. Jean. You didn't do this, he murmured, with the biggest smile of the day. I replied. Oh? I did. I exposed everything online. How you were married. Had a mistress and a child. And how horribly you treated me. Lucas let out a scream that echoed through the airport lobby, causing the people around us to stare. He completely lost control. What have you done? My reputation. My followers. My entire career is ruined. Look at these messages. They are calling me the worst man in the world. They are saying I betrayed everyone. I casually raised my phone, tilting my head playfully. Oh? By the way, this whole scene is being live-streamed. Wow! Look! Over 5 million viewers love it. Lucas's face twisted in panic. And he lunged for my phone. Give me that. But it was too late. His horrible words and his meltdown were already there for everyone to see. As he slumped to the ground, the airport floor full of rage and despair, I calmly walked past him and headed towards the taxi stand, feeling lighter than I had in years. Afterward, Lucas faced an intense online backlash. His entire career collapsed. His success had been based on the image of a sweet, charming single man with a lovely voice that attracted many female fans. But now that image was completely shattered. The fact that Lucas was secretly married shocked his female followers, who felt betrayed. But the scandal didn't end there. The news of his mistress and child made even his male followers go wild. They called him unfaithful. And the story was filled with juicy details. He hid his marriage, cheated on his wife, and then they discovered the child might not even be his. This became a hot topic online, drawing the attention of people who had never heard of Lucas before. He was now the center of attention on the internet. But for all the wrong reasons. Although Lucas posted a carefully worded apology on his social media, the reaction didn't subside. His subscriber numbers plummeted. And eventually, he had no choice but to stop streaming altogether. Sometime later, as I was leaving my office building after work, I saw Lucas waiting for me. His face was tear-stained as he begged me. I can't take it anymore. I can't even go out without people staring or mocking me. Please help me. You're the only one I've ever truly loved. Let's get back together and be husband and wife again. I looked at him coldly and told him that if he kept harassing me, I would call the police. That was the last time I saw Lucas. Later, I heard that the child Miriam had wasn't Lucas's after all. When the truth came out, it caused even more trouble and drama. And the two broke up. I didn't let either of them get away with it. I demanded compensation from both of them. Lucas used the last of his savings to pay me, while Miriam had to borrow money from her parents to cover her share. As for Miriam, she tried to pressure her child's real father, another streamer, into marrying her. But he completely rejected her. With no other options, she went back to living with her strict parents, and is now raising the child there. I really hope the child grows up healthy and happy despite it all. Lucas's situation only worsened. After paying me, he was completely broke. The companies he had worked with sued him for damages, leaving him with nothing. When he went to his family for help, his decent and responsible parents cut ties with him, ashamed of his behavior. Now, from what I've heard, Lucas lives alone in a rundown apartment, a shadow of the person he once was. Even knowing all this, I feel no sympathy for him. As for me, I've returned to my single life and am fully focused on my work. I couldn't continue living in the apartment I shared with Lucas, so I put it up for sale. It's a new beginning, and I feel lighter than ever. It turned out that property values had gone up in the last few years, so I made a good profit when I sold the condo. I also sold the car that Lucas and Miriam had been using to an acquaintance. With that money, I bought myself a new car. Once everything calmed down, my sister, who had been a great help, told me, "Good job, Jean. Just think of him like a dog that bit you. Forget about him and move on. But next time, don't pick a man just because he's cute." Okay. She was right. This whole experience taught me something important. I think I'm done with marriage. I realized that living for my work suits me much better. Now that I live in a new place, in a high-rise apartment I recently bought. The best part is that this apartment allows pets. Now that my work life has calmed down, I plan to finally get the cat I've always dreamed of having. From now on, I want to focus on the things I need to do, take care of myself, and live a positive and fulfilling life.